There it goes. Now we're recording.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's it. You just circle it a little bit.
Thank you, Linda.
Pan around once or twice. That's it.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Easy.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
I'll be here for a little bit. Yeah.
2017 was a great year, and 2018 is going to be even a greater year.
Please.
I understand there's one or two Trump supporters in the House tonight. Well, I'm going to read something. It's just for you, one or two Trump supporters. Actually, it has to do with Trump's accomplishments. In this particular part one, it has to do with the judicial system. Now, we all know that Neil Gorsuch was confirmed to the Supreme Court. That, of course, was very, very important. However, what's also very important are the lower courts. They're extremely important as well. As of mid-December, 19 of Trump's 66 nominees have been confirmed by the Senate. Now, in comparison, Obama, at the same point in time, only had 26 choices to Trump's 66. And only 13 were confirmed to Trump's 19. Great start. Also, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich said, the impact under Trump is especially being felt at the appellate level. The importance of this dramatic reshaping of the entire federal court system cannot be overstated. While it's easy to focus on the U.S. Supreme Court, lower and appellate courts will make decisions that impact ordinary Americans on a daily basis for decades to come. So these appointments are extremely crucial. Obama appointed, I believe, about 300 in his 8-year term. We got to make sure we counter that, at least for those one or two Trump supporters in the House tonight. Okay. This is a great start to make America great again. Next month, there will be some other accomplishments. Dean in the House, Dean Bob, where are you? Dean, where? Okay. Folks, you may remember in November, there was a referendum on the ballot pertaining to property tax elimination. That did pass. That was great. That gives us a framework, at least to let the legislators know that we are interested in doing that. It did not accomplish anything other than let them know that we won it. The legislators themselves are going to have to put bills together. Now, we already have bills ready to go. But the point I want to make here, 56 counties voted in favor of it. Only 11 did not. What's interesting is the northern part of the state, where our support in Harrisburg is the weakest, voted for it. This will give us, Dean in particular, some ammunition against those legislators that have not signed on to eliminate your school property taxes. Now, I'm going to show you. This is not the greatest map. Here's a map of Pennsylvania. You see all that green, folks? All that green is voted yes. All those counties voted yes. That's 56. The red did not. Now, look at the northern part, the upper part of that map. They all voted, they're in green. These are the areas where the legislators told us, hey, we don't have a tax problem up there. Our people are not interested in making a change. Well, this shows otherwise. So this gives us ammunition to work on. So hopefully we can parlay that into something even better. Particularly with Dean and his group. Moving on to another subject. I want to give you a quick update on the Tea Party, Tri-County Tea Party Coalition. This coalition was put together May of last year. It was formed for the 2018 election. It consists of 5 of us from 4 groups and 3 counties. Our goal is to meet with all the main candidates, those running for governor, Senate, U.S. Senate, and the U.S. House. Have private meetings with them, go through with them on issues that are concerned to all of us. At some point in time prior to the primary, we will give you our recommendations on all of these. Now, I told you previously, those that we have met, and I'll just go over that briefly. We met with governor candidates Scott Wagner, and Paul Mangle. We also met with U.S. Congressman Lou Barletta, who's running for the U.S. Senate. We met with U.S. Candidates for the 15th district, a dense seat. We met with Scott Ulinger. We met with Marty Norstein. We met with Mike Priest and Ryan McKinsey. And next Tuesday, we will be meeting with Dean Brown. That's 5. We expect folks to have those here at our meetings. We will be meeting with others as well. I do want to say, folks, if you're interested in having a say in your government, you want to have a say in your government, you want to make sure you're here for the next 3 months. You're going to have, next month, governor candidate Scott Wagner will be here. March, we will have governor candidate Paul Mangle will be here. In April, we expect to have all five of the U.S. congressmen here. In addition, we probably will have 1 or 2 of the lieutenant governor candidates here as well. Now just imagine all of those here. Hey folks, bring your questions. This is your chance to get up close and personal. Bring a family member. Bring anyone. We want to fill the house because power is in numbers. So hopefully you heed my advice and you do join us. Okay, that takes care of me. You won't hear me anymore. Okay, I'm going to introduce Carol. Carol Bardecki, if you come up, please. Carol takes care of our Constitution class. Those of you who have not signed up for her class, you want to please do so. She's been doing this for years. I will tell you, folks, there's so many things in our Constitution. Our forefathers, founding fathers, would certainly be rolling over in their graves. Carol, you got it.
Thanks, Sam. I've been selling my class for the last couple months. You might be tired of hearing about it. We had our first meeting. I have 12 members. My living room is packed, and they are great. We had a great first meeting. They are enthusiastic. We talked to each other. We had discussions. I think it's going to be a great class. We're doing really wonderfully. And so, from now on, I guess I'm not going to be selling my class anymore because I got my class. It's ready to go. So my job from now on is each month to tell you a little something about the Constitution. And this month, I decided to talk about the amendments. Our Constitution is now more than 230 years old. In 230 years, it has been amended only 27 times. That's pretty good. But it's even better than that sounds. You know, the guys that wrote this Constitution were brilliant, brilliant. And the more I learn, the more I am in awe of them. They even wrote into the document knowing that sometime down the road we might want to change something. So they put in there a method to amend it. Okay, 27 amendments. Well, I say, in my opinion, the first 10 aren't really amendments. The first 10 are in there because they wanted our rights spelled out An amendment is a change or an addition to the document. This is just emphasizing what our rights are. They wanted to put special emphasis on it. So the first 10 didn't really change anything. So they're not legitimate amendments in my mind. So now we're down to 17. Well, 2 of those others, number 18, prohibition, and number 21, got rid of prohibition, reversed it. So those 2 don't count because they're out of the running now. So instead of 17, we have 15. So we really only amended this document 15 times in 230 years. I think that's a pretty good record. I think that shows what a good document they came up with. I want to talk a little bit about my class again. Just because my class is filled and I started it, doesn't mean that you can't get into a class. If you have 10 or a dozen people that are interested in studying the Constitution and they want a class, come and talk to me. If we can find a place to have it and a time that I can do it and all those people can meet, I'll do another class. So think about it, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. How many's in your class right now, Carol? How many's in your class? 12. Great. Okay. You're having it at your home right now, aren't you? Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, folks. Up next, Ray. Ray is going to talk to you about letter writing campaign, petitions to our legislators. Sorry, folks, I've got to tell you, when you go out, the parking lot at some spots is a little slippery, a little icy, so be extra careful when you leave. I hope to remind you again as well.
Thank you. Okay, this month's letter project is asking our state representatives to make it illegal for school districts to pay teachers to do union work. It also asks that unions be required to reimburse school districts for the administrative costs of collecting and sending union dues to the unions. So we got that letter going out, and we need you to stop back there if you're on our letter writing. Get that done tonight. We're still looking for some more volunteers to help with letter writing. Next month's project will be asking to support Pennsylvania House Bill 2002, which would lower our state income tax rate from 3.7 down to 2.82. Representative Mark Gillen is the co-sponsor on this, and we're going to try to help him out. It's probably not going to go anywhere because this state doesn't really like to reduce taxes. So if you have any questions about what's included in any letter, feel free to ask us back at the desk there. We'll be there the rest of the night. Thank you.
That was a quick 5 minutes, let me tell you. I thought I had a little breather room. Okay, folks, up next, Eldon is going to talk to you about smart meters. Now, he could talk a couple hours on this subject. There's a lot of different areas here, but he's going to hone in on the hazard, I believe. Is that correct? Okay, you got it.
I'll be right, sir. Before we get into that, we had the students here with letter writing campaign for the veterans last month, and they had conflicts. They couldn't be here to receive their certificates. So they're going to be presented at Monday night school board meeting at Schuylkill Alley. They're going to present their letters, read them to the school board. But I feel this is important to try to get our youth involved in this organization. I really want to encourage everyone to attend the school board meeting. It's on the west side of the Schuylkill Valley High School. It's 7 o'clock, and especially the veterans, wear your hats. And let's show some support for our young people. I look at this exercise as a real first step. I've been in contact with the teachers. We're trying to find a way to expand it for next year, maybe involve other school districts. But we really need the support of the Patriots. So whomever looking for an excuse to go out Monday evening at 7 o'clock, it'd really be nice to see you. Now getting back to what Sam was talking about, I ran into a little snag. My printer died today. So I don't have a copy of my speech, which is fortunate for you, because it contained a lot of statistics and gibberish, gabbish, boring stuff. So what I decided to do was focus on what we know about smart meters. This is a two-stage program. Tonight we're going to be talking about the health ramifications of RF, EMF, whatever you want to call it, which includes smart meters and so forth. Next month, we're going to be talking about Agenda 21, what Big Brother has in store for you, and the part that smart meters play in their plans. But who here knows what a smart meter is? Anybody? Let's see, high up. 1, 2, 3. Boy, not many. I was hoping it would be more than that. Do you have smart meters in your home right now? 1 does, 2 does, 4, 5. More hands are going up all the time. Do you feel any pressure on your body, your attitudes, sleep habits, anything at all since smart meters were installed? You do?
No, I got budget for you.
Yes.
What's a smart meter?
Okay, I guess. I assume this is they knew it, the rest of you weren't interested. Smart meters could be referred to by several names. They're really digital meters. Normally, what we're familiar with is what they call an analog meter. It's the way the shape of the electronic curve that transmits the data. Digital meters, which are sometimes called smart meters or AMI smart meters, are digitized. The advantages of a digital meter are the analog meters are limited in the amount of data that can be transmitted. With digital meters, it is, you can modify the frequency, increase the frequencies. It's almost limitless as to the amount of information that can be transmitted. But by transmitting that at high frequency, it impacts your health. There's many of those. Does that answer your question? It recorded your electricity or your, yeah, electric meter, water meter, gas meter. Any other questions?
I got one. In case it sounds like I'm stupid or something.
No, hey, I tell you.
I'm just breaking things. I wouldn't know what they eat. Only the landlord.
That's probably right. what he said was probably the landlord would be the only one who would know that he would not. And that's a thing. And you may not know that it was installed if you're renting a place to live. So that's a good point. Does that answer your question? Okay. His original question was, what's a smart meter? And I was remiss in not explaining it to the rest of you. At present, smart meters are being installed on all new construction in the state, and there's and some other houses and so forth, especially on the west side of the city. PECO has been installing some of them. I was surprised to see that there weren't more people here who had them installed by now, but that's another issue. Oh, there's a whole mess of hands. Maybe we should have a microphone. Yes.
When they install one, they tell you that that's what we did. They just say, we're installing a meter. I got a gas furnace. I said I used of the meter in my house. How will I know smart meter or not?
Okay, her question is, how does she know if she has a modern smart meter or the old analog meters on her gas system? The old analog meters will probably have most likely 4 dials that have a hand that look like they're going around like a clock. If they don't have that and have more of a rectangular window to look at, then you have a smart meter. There was another hand up. So,
I just want, they will send you a letter. The southeast corner of Center Township received them this week, that they're going to be installing.
did they give a deadline of when they're going to install them?
I called because I'm going to be on vacation, and I said, I don't want this installed when I'm not here, because they do turn off your electric for a very brief time. So if you want to be there, supposedly, according to what they told me.
Somebody ought to have a mic out in the audience. She's saying a lot of words that I'll try and repeat.
Okay, if you want to be there, you call them, and they will set up an appointment that you will be there when they do this.
What she's saying is that Center Township received notices that they're going to be installed. And she has an issue where she's probably not going to be home, away on vacation, and they have to turn the power off to install. And this could cause problems with her alarm system and so forth. Are you done, Sally? Okay. I don't know what the answer is, but did you receive the notice directly from the power company, or was it from a lawyer?
No, it's from the company who is going to be installing the meters. The gentleman was very nice. I just have a doubt that I'm going to get an appointment out of this. I just, you know, and my concern is I have animals, and I do have a caretaker coming in.
So,
but if they turn something on and it doesn't go back on, they could cause a big problem if I'm not there.
did you respond to them in writing?
No, not yet, but I'm going to wait and
Well,
see if they call.
you may not want to do that, because right now, legally, the power company has not notified you.
No, it just says we are installing these for the med ed.
That, who are they? Do you know them?
No, I don't know the med ed either.
Well, but you know, you pay a bill to Med Ed every month, right? So you have a rapport with Med Ed. But this is a third party. If you have a lawyer friend, I would suggest that you talk to them before you respond. That goes for
They're supposed to
everybody.
call me back and set up an appointment.
Well, but still, you're dealing with a third party that you don't know. That is the point.
It's energy systems or something.
I don't care who it is.
No, he went, somebody got here, the utility company is the med ed. The company that sent the letter was energy systems or something. I wish I would have brought it.
It doesn't matter who they are. They are not the company that you have a contract with. they're a third party, and they do not have any more standing legally than I do. There was another question.
I'm not sure how they asked this, but is this just an updated version of the old system, or is it some way to spy on us?
You got that 100% right. I was going to get into that a little later, but since you brought that up, what smart meters do is they record almost continuously your power usage. There is plans to put a chip in every appliance, and they will be able to tell whenever you have that appliance turned on. They already have them in these sweepers, oh, what are they called? Maybe your ladies know. They roll around by themselves. They record when you're using them and send the information back to their office. They know whenever you're taking it and how long they run and so forth. Every appliance, the plans are for every appliance to have that chip in the future so that whenever you turn something on and off, that data is going to be recorded.
Can you refuse it? Go ahead and try it, but I got that they cut my power.
See, that's, can you refuse it? The answer is yes, but there are issues and problems. There is one lady who lives not too far from here who has been fighting the gas company for 2 years. Up until this point, they haven't changed her meter. There's some serious health problems associated with these meters. You brought up the Big Brother issue, watching you. I was planning to address that next month. But I'd really like to get back to talking about the health issues. There have been studies made that show that some people are what they call electrohyposensitive. And it causes nervous conditions, insomnia, and so forth and so on. It has been known for years, maybe decades, but it's finally being recognized by some medical establishment, and there's studies being done. In fact, in Israel, in one town, there's a woman over there who is very astute in studies that she's been doing. And that town banned Wi-Fi in all of their schools because the Wi-Fi transmissions can disrupt your brain functions. There have been brain studies done that show there was, I think, 10 people that they submitted to the radiation from the smart meters, and all 10 people showed brain deformalities under MRI studies. The one problem with the study was they didn't have a control group. There's another $25 million of your taxpayer money was spent for a study, and they concluded that in some cases they have seen sperm count reduced by 50%. Now for your young people here, it won't apply to most of us, but for you young people, it just means you got to do it twice as often. But the real issue is not so much that the sperm count is lessened, it's that some of the sperm are deformed. And what that may mean to the offspring, I don't know, and neither do they. The studies didn't go into that depth. But there again, that study really bugs me because we spend $25 million of your money and my money, out there, yours, my money, and they didn't have a control group that survived. The control group that they had, they caged in a separate cage, and they all died young. Now, what that means is all this transmission must be good for you, or else you wouldn't have lived that long to complete the study. So I can find problems with a lot of the studies. The bottom line is, we don't want smart meters. It is very difficult to prevent. Where do I stand on time?
5 minutes.
We don't want these things. It's difficult to get them not installed because the Public Utility Commission directed all the power companies and gas companies to install them by 2020 or 2023, one or the other. But that's not what the legislators said. When the bill was passed by our legislator and our Senate and the General Assembly, it stated that we did not have to have them, that we could opt out. The PUC decided that they're going to make them mandatory. And the problem with our process is, if you apply to the PUC for a complaint, they'll only accept the complaint if it affects you directly. So if I would complain to the PUC and say, hey, I want you to abide by the legislation that was passed, they won't take my testimony. And I tried that. So we have got to somehow, the only other course we have is a suit through Commonwealth Court, and I don't know if we can do it. I wanted to get into more details, but apparently I'm a little short on time. Is there anyone here who wants to know more about smart meters or interested in getting involved in contacting our legislators? Anybody? Oh, Phyllis, would you please see me in the back? I have a sheet, and see if we can get our legislators to do something. They don't want to hear about it. I spoke to both my representative and my state senator, and I embarrassed my state senator because he didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And the next time I called him, boy, he knew. His chief of staff did some research. I see a question in the back.
I have two things to say about the problems with these meters. One is the EMF power that they generate, and the other is the radio frequency power. Now, I took EMF readings in the back of my house after the meter was installed, and they were off scale. And that was 30 to 40 feet away from the meter.
Well, that's an issue that I was going to get into, but they're waving at me. Would you please see me in the back after the meeting?
Sure.
And yes.
I read it some time ago, wrap your meter with foil if you had one of these, and cut it down.
Yes, it will, or even screening. But that doesn't solve the bigger problem. The bigger problem is we've got to get them made illegal. There's a lot of studies, Michigan and California and Massachusetts currently have legislation to ban them going through their legislators. Pennsylvania, nothing's happening, you can't get to talk to anybody. But I'm sorry that I couldn't be more complete. Another question? So I'm sorry about being a little In completing my presentation, all I'll close with is these things are a health hazard, a serious health hazard. There is much data on any of the internet. Go on the internet, research it. It's there to be seen, and a lot of studies. Some countries are looking at banning them. The last I saw, there was something like 18,000 studies done by prestigious universities and foreign governments. We are way behind when it comes to EMF and RF type transmissions compared to the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention, and please, we need some help in contacting our legislators, so please see me in the back. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. Folks, up next, Helen McMinn is going to be introducing our guest speaker tonight. Folks, you're going to find his presentation fantastic. I know I did when I checked online in a couple other areas. Helen?
Hello, Patriots. Thanks for coming out tonight. All right. Before I make the introduction for Mr. Horvat, I do have one thing that I'd like to inform you about. Tomorrow is the National March for Life in Washington, D.C. And it just so happens that I had a number of cancellations due to sickness today. And so if anybody would like to go on my bus to the National March for Life, it's free. And you can bring your family, whatever. I have like 14 seats available. So, you know, you can see me after Mr. Horvat's talk. I can stay around for a little bit, but I gotta get up by 5 to get the coffee and donuts for all of you to go, all right? So if anybody is interested in going to the March for Life, see me after Mr. Horvat's talk, okay? All right. Mr. Horvat is a scholar, a researcher, an educator, an international speaker, and author of the book Return to Order, which I've read. Very good. His writings have appeared worldwide, including in the Wall Street Journal, the Christian Post, the American Thinker, the Blaze, Crisis, Fox News, and the Washington Times. So we have a pretty recognized person here tonight. He gives more than 150 radio and TV interviews annually, and we are fortunate to have him speaking to us tonight. For more than 2 decades, he has been researching and writing about what's gone wrong with America's culture and economy, an effort that culminated in the release of his award-winning book, Return to Order, From a Frenzied Economy to an Organic Christian Society, Where We've Been, How We Got Here, and Where We Need to Go. Mr. Horvat is Vice President and a member of the Board of Directors of the American Society for the Defense of Tradition, Family, and Property, and resides in New York. His research began in 1986 to study the crisis of modern economy and to prepare a conservative, everybody, yay, response. An important point to remember is that the key to confronting the nation's problems is to first understand them. In his talk, he will provide a penetrating analysis of today's frenzied lifestyles and markets and what we can do to remedy these problems. Of the many testimonials I found online of Mr. Horvat, the most poignant was from the Honorable Edwin Meese, former Attorney General of the United States. He says, Mr. Horvat's book provides an interesting analysis of how the U.S. has departed from the spiritual, cultural, and economic precepts that supported the founding and the early history of our republic. He sets forth valuable recommendations for restoring our society to its foundation of ordered liberty and traditional values. I believe that Mr. Horvat's presentation tonight is important information that we need to know as patriots and what we need to understand and implement in our families, our communities, and our country if we are going to have a chance to restore our nation to greatness once again. And as patriots, don't we all agree that America is worth fighting for? Amen? Amen. Let me hear you. All right. So I introduce you to Mr. Horvat, who I highly admire and
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here and to speak. The topic of my talk is the dangers of the Cultural Revolution, which is destroying the America we know and love. If you look at the state of the nation that we have today, it's puzzling, especially for conservatives like you and me. And we have all the conditions for success. So much favors our course. I mean, for the first time in a long time, conservatives, or at least those elected as conservatives, hold both houses of Congress and the presidency. The overwhelming victory of 2018 went beyond Washington and extended to all levels of government. We may argue that the conservatives who were elected were sufficiently conservative, but we did win the political battle. At the same time, we have a lot of good things going for us. We have a lot of things going in our favor. We have plenty of good proposals that should bring back the nation to prosperity and greatness. A lot of very good ideas. Less socialism is always a good idea. Ordered liberty is always a good idea. Less government and a strong national defense and secure borders are always a good idea. The advantage is made greater by the fact that the liberals have so many bad ideas. I mean, more socialism and more government is always a bad idea. And you can count on liberals to recycle their bad ideas indefinitely. We have talented people. We have momentum. We have a mandate for change. We have the fact that everyone feels the oppression of political correctness that works in our favor. We also have the fact that the economy is booming. Unemployment is down. The stock market is soaring. And yet, despite it all, many commentators say that, well, we haven't been able to turn it around. It's not, things aren't working as we expected. And I believe the problem is not a political problem, but because we have already proven that the political battle in America can be won during the last election. The real problem is much more a cultural problem that needs to be resolved. What's destroying America we know and love is the cultural battle, and that is where we must continue to fight in the years ahead. Our problem is that we haven't yet won culturally. You'll notice I said we haven't yet won culturally. No, I did not say we have lost the culture war, as a lot of people have said, because we haven't. I do not believe we lost the culture war, for the simple reason that the other side has not won. The other side is actually in just as bad shape as we are. The liberals love to say that we've lost the culture war, that the conservatives have lost the culture war. And they've been doing this for decades, and we're still here. They love to say we're getting older, but they're also getting older. Tomorrow I will be going to Washington and joining 300,000 pro-lifers. President Trump will address us at that rally. The other side can't put together similar rallies. They have announced on Monday that they're going to have a Women's Day march as sort of a counterpart to the Washington March for Life. But they will not have anything in Washington. They simply can't put it together. And despite our problems, we are actually growing. Twice as many people identify as conservatives than liberal in the United States. More youth identify as conservatives today than in the time of Reagan. I mean, these are verifiable facts. And so let me repeat, we have major problems, and so does the other side. We have not won the culture war, but the other side has not either. We are in the midst of a battle of which the outcome is yet to be decided. The cultural battle is the battle of how we live, how we eat, what we drink, how we behave, the morals we follow, the families we raise, the entertainment we enjoy. All of this is part of the cultural revolution. It has its impact on politics, economy, and government. And you and I have a special role to play. We cannot give up the fight. We are still standing, and that is all the more reason to engage if we are to preserve the America we know and love. And so my purpose here is to present you not a dire picture or even a rosy picture. It's to present the situation as it is. We live in very decadent times, and I'm the first one to admit it. Our situation is grave, but I do not see things, I think we need to see things as they really are, and not as the liberals would have us believe. We need to control the narrative. And the narrative is the situation is grave, but with God's grace, we can win. With His help, there is hope. So what I'd like to do is to present some considerations about the cultural battle that I consider so important. And what we can do if we are going to win. To do this, I'd like to take some insights from the book, Return to Order, from Frenzied Economy, for an Organic Christian Society, where we've been, how we got here, and where we need to go. My goal is to help you understand better what's happening inside our culture and how this threatens the America we know and love. And in order to illustrate this, I'd like to use an image. In the introduction of Return to Order, I used the image of a cruise ship on a never-ending cruise to represent the cultural problems we now face. If you look at our cruise ship, what the book shows how much of our modern society has taken on the appearance of a cruise ship. A lot of people consider life a big party. People are engaged what I call the frenetic intemperance of our times. They want everything now, instantly, effortlessly. But if you look at our cruise ship, it's a very comfortable cruise ship. And to all outward appearances, it looks great. Our society looks great. The restaurants and theaters are full. The bars are bustling. There's a lot of money around. People are spending a lot of money. Great parties going on. And people think that there's no cause for concern.
Excuse me, Johnny. Excuse me a second.
Yes.
If you need to talk, please go in the back of the room or go outside, because we can hear it filtering to the front. Thank you very much.
So in our society, in our Christian society, it's like a big party's going on. And people are told there's no cause for concern. That every aspect of life will be taken care of by management. The problem is that cruise ships is what are places where you're supposed to forget about reality. You live in your own little world. You're supposed to enjoy life and seek happiness. You're not supposed to worry about things or take things too seriously. The aim of the cruise ship is to get along with the other passengers, to have fun with them. You really don't care who they are, what religion they profess, what sins they commit, as long as you join with them and live and enjoy life on the cruise. That's the whole purpose of this never-ending cruise. Now, let me get this clear, that a cruise is a way to get away from it, take a time away from our lives. But it's not a way to run a country. You can't spend your whole life on a cruise ship, because reality always comes charging back. Tragedy strikes, sufferings happen. Somebody has to pay the bill. And that's part of our problem today. Everybody knows that this is not the way real life is. Everyone knows that life has its problems, and you can't pretend they don't exist as if you're on a cruise ship. But they prefer not to think about it. Everyone's good for one more game, one more drink to keep the party going. And let the government pay for it. It's free stuff. When conservatives like you and me mention very real problems, financial problems, moral problems, that it's not free stuff, we're called killjoys. And our problem is the cruise ship has been transformed itself into a way of life. And so there are two factions that coexist on this cruise ship. There are those who work hard on board and make the thing run, keep it going and prospering. And there are others that only care about the parties, want the cruise to go on indefinitely, enjoying a life without consequences. And that's pretty much been the political and cultural situation of the last few decades. No one likes to stop a party. It's a thankless task. But sometimes the conservatives are in power, and so they rein in the power, and rein in the party, and put the ship back on course. And then the liberals take over and inject new life and money into the party. And sometimes the two parties get it so mixed up you can't tell one from the other. And throughout this struggle between one and the other, there's a sort of an agreement that's been reached, that the liberals agree that some things are untouchable because you have to keep the ship going, and someone has to pay for all the fun. And the conservatives tolerate some of the parties, saying, well, we don't want to appear too rigid. And that's been pretty much the situation until recently. We sort of got along. Nobody really messed with the fundamentals of the ship. We kept the ship going. But that is now changing. What we're seeing now is the party has gotten out rowdy and out of hand. It's causing a very explosive situation in society. And that's why I believe the cultural war is very important. The culture has changed a lot over the last 50 years. I'm sure you've all realized that. But the kinds of changes in the culture now, the things we're seeing threaten the America we know and love. I mean, things are happening on board the ship that never happened before, and are not supposed to happen on a cruise ship. People are polarized, they're fighting on a cruise ship. Some are not allowing others the freedom of speech. They're messing with the bathrooms. They're tearing down symbols on the cruise ship. They're not following the captain's orders. Suddenly it's not a cruise anymore, but it's becoming an unbearable situation. We still have a ship with enormous freedoms and advantages, don't get me wrong. But something is now happening with the culture on board that changes the picture in a major way. They're messing with the fundamentals, the basic order of what a ship is, and turning everything upside down. Let's translate it to what's happening in the country. In my views, the liberals are now working toward changing and destroying the constitutional order upon which our country is built. Let me explain that. If you study constitutional law, and I was glad to see that there is someone here that studies constitutional law and teaches constitutional law, you'll see that the Constitution was much more than just a legal document. It represents the laws, the institutions, the customs of the people, both written and unwritten. Our Constitution is the result of a system of law that is based on English common law. It goes back 800 years. It reflects all sorts of legal concepts, institutions, and customs that define who we are as a people. The great conservative thinker Russell Kirk, he said, quote, "Beneath any formal constitution, and even beneath our Constitution, lies an unwritten Constitution. Much more difficult to define, but really much more powerful. The unwritten Constitution consists of the body of institutions and customs and manners and conventions and voluntary associations, which may not be mentioned in the formal document, but nonetheless form the social fabric that sustains the formal Constitution. In other words, our Constitution is only as strong as the institutions that hold it up, the social fabric that supports it. And when these things are gone, then the constitutional order is gone. I might add that our Constitution is also based on natural and divine law. And this is indisputable. All the authorities of English and American common law claim that our law is highly influenced by what they call a higher law tradition. That is, a law that's based upon the Ten Commandments. And this has been verified by a lot of scholars. One of them by the name of William Federer. He wrote a book called The Ten Commandments and Their Influence on American Law. And it's a compilation showing how each commandment had its impact on our law, as established by the Constitution. That the Ten Commandments and the Constitution are intertwined even today. So our Constitution is a document, like it or not, that reflects ancient customs, institutions, laws of the past. Our Constitution is based on a higher law tradition that, again, like it or not, is reflected in the Ten Commandments. This is an historic fact. It's not an interpretation. And this is the foundation of the America we know and love. This is also the target of the latest phase of the cultural war, to root out these institutions, these customs, these habits that support our constitutional order. Liberals have long attacked our Constitution, calling it a living document, a revolving document. I'm sure you've heard that, where they say we can interpret it as we see fit, according to the times. They've long engaged in judicial activism, which undermines the rule of law. They've overturned so many of our institutions and installed big government to take the place of family, faith, and community. And they've done all these things, but they still have not been able to destroy the basic order of things in America. Well, now they're attacking those vestiges of Christian order still found in our culture that sustain our constitutional order. They're attacking the general system according to which the community has agreed to be governed. These are things that are what Alexis de Tocqueville called the habits of the heart. He said they are the habits and social virtues that keep civil society civil. They're the last things to go. Alexis de Tocqueville was a young Frenchman in the mid-19th century who visited the United States, observed how Americans got things done and how they got them done well, and then he wrote his famous book called Democracy in America. And one of the things he observed was that what he called America's habits of the heart. He said, Americans have a lot of principles that generate habits of the heart, which he defined as customs and general opinions and attitudes that shaped the country. It's very much a part of our constitutional order. So manners of speaking are habits of the heart. Love of country is a habit of the heart. Sentiments of community are habits of the heart. Saying God bless America is a habit of the heart. The clothes we wear, the courtesies we extend, the myths we follow, all of these are habits of the heart. It was these habits of the heart that took so many different peoples from all over the world and melded them together into one people. It was these habits of the heart that made Americans very patriotic. They attached us to family and community. They made us staunch defenders of private property, free enterprise, hard and honest work, resourcefulness, ingenuity, and also made us very anti-socialist and anti-communist. And above all, the habits of the heart made America very religious. We are a very religious nation. These habits of the heart help weave together the social fabric. They led to very strong principled stands. They unified a diverse America into many different peoples and made us one, made us governable, according to a constitutional order. Well, these habits of the heart are now being targeted. And it's a big part of the cultural war that is threatening the America we know and love. Liberals don't like habits of the heart because they're full of tradition, virtue, and morals. And leftist policy likes to steamroll over them and replace them with massive government programs and politically correct mandates. Until recently, liberals used to tolerate these habits of the heart because at least they kept some order so that they could enjoy life more. But now the most radical liberals hate even these habits of the heart because they feel they're restricted. They hate these habits even though they're self-destructive. They attack these tiny remnants of our constitutional order found in the habits of the heart. So, for example, you'll have people who say, I can no longer bear with the habit of identity. You can't get more basic than that. And so they'll say, I want to be whatever I self-identify as, and I want you to recognize me as such. I want to be a man or a woman, something in between. One of the 60 or 70 genders recognized by Facebook, or one I make up myself that I can change daily or hourly whenever I want. I mean, you can't run a society that has to deal with these things. You can't run a society when you have to worry about being sued for using the wrong pronoun. Life becomes impossible. Another example, people say, I can no longer be restricted by the habits associated with logic. Again, something very basic. They claim logic is too rigid, and everything must be reduced to emotions and feelings. So very common what is now called the snowflake generation, very much along this line. We have an outreach program which we call TFT Student Action, in which our student activists get into debates, or something like debates, with campus liberals. And the only problem is the other side does not use logical arguments. They'll say crazy things, they'll repeat slogans. They brought in a dog that you could pet to absorb all the bad feelings that we were supposedly spreading about. And you just cringe just thinking about it. And we make videos of these debates just to show how crazy they are, because otherwise no one would believe us. And for those working on the videos, it's something you can't script. And you can't pay people to better misrepresent their cause. They're just so irrational. For example, one woman during a debate about abortion said that she was not a human in the womb, but a nut. And that later became a human. Our student action activists resisted the temptation to tell her that perhaps it was the other way around. And so a kind of cultural suicide is taking place. Many of these very radical liberals and anarchists simply don't care about the habits of the heart. They don't care about the Constitution or the First Amendment. The only thing they care about is their gratification, their self-realization. And anything that slightly reminds them of something that's Christian or Western or rational becomes a target. And so the vestiges of Christian order, which countless Americans like you and I here still cling to, torment these new revolutionaries. They cannot tolerate them. They want them down. That is why the crosses must come down. That's why the Christmas trees must be deprived of Christ, turned into holiday trees. That's why the Ten Commandment monuments must be destroyed. Why the national anthem cannot be respected at football games. Why statues must be hauled away in the dead of the night. That's why everything is politicized today. The smallest thing is irrationally attacked. Everything becomes politically charged because the target is Christian order, as manifested in every little thing. And that explains many of the strange battlefields upon which we now fight. I mean, we used to fight almost exclusively upon principles, upon legislation, upon elections. But now the fight has shifted many times to the vestiges of principles found in the little things and habits of the heart. Everywhere is now a battlefield. Your least actions can have political meanings. You have to ask yourself, should I drink Starbucks coffee, which supports same-sex marriage and every other liberal cause? Or should I go to Chick-fil-A that supports the family and the marriage and our veterans? Should I need to stay away from Target that has its transgender bathrooms and dressing rooms? Better to go to Hobby Lobby that supports the family and is against abortion. Do I watch the NFL or do I support the flag? Do I order from Papa John's that supports the flag or from Pizza Hut that goes with the kneelers? Do I really want to put that bumper sticker on my car? You have to be careful what you say on what you say at work or what you put on social media. Even the weather has been politicized. There are those who say that Hurricane Irma that ravaged Florida was a chastisement not from God but nature for the election of President Trump, or punishment for our denial of global warming. The latest attack on the habits of the heart, and I kid you not, is civility. There are college professors that are now saying that civility is a racial social construct that is condescending to minorities. When you try to be nice to those who are attacking you, you are actually putting them down. And so we must do away with civility. They say because it's an oppressive structure, but actually because it is a Christian expression of human dignity. Ladies and gentlemen, this is getting out of hand, and in fact, you can't even say ladies and gentlemen anymore. New York City trains are now forbidding conductors and the public address system from using the term ladies and gentlemen because it's not inclusive of transgender passengers. The more important thing to remember, though, is that any cultural issue can now become a battlefield. It can become a platform for revolution. It's not about the issues anymore, but the uprooting of the vestiges of order. The statue removal controversy is not about statues. The bathroom wars really has nothing to do with bathrooms. And dare I say the unspeakable, global warming has nothing to do with the climate anymore. These are all just props used in this latest phase of an old culture war against all things that are Western, Christian, or rational. Well, the targets of all these things are the habits of the heart that must be destroyed. And so we have to remember that anything can be turned into a weapon to attack our Christian order. Anything can be weaponized, whether it be a symbol, or words, or gestures, or social media, sports, wedding cakes, cars, sidewalks, bathrooms. And since these things surround us, there's no place exempt from this war. We find it everywhere, in the home, in the school, the church, and the businesses. Anything can be the next target in this cultural war. And so to conclude, this politicized, weaponized America is not America we know and love. What we see is a country where there is resentment, not trust, unrestraint, not virtue. It is a country in which God and His law is not honored, and people set themselves up as gods. And this is changing the culture for everyone. Well, this is how I see the present situation. We're stuck on a cruise ship that is no longer a cruise ship of delights and pleasures. And by their rejection of America's habits of the heart, the radicals are polarizing everything, turning everything into a battlefield. The radicals do not want to return to the cruise ship of old. They do not want to make America great again. They don't even like the idea of greatness. Some of them don't even like the idea of America. All they want to do is a world of unrestraint and complete intemperance. They want to overthrow order, where we want to return to order. And so we're stuck on this dysfunctional ship, which everyone's on board, is fed up, and we can't get anything done. And so in light of this, we need to see what we can do to return order to our ship. And so I think there are three things that can be done that you can do and continue to do in this regard, because I'm sure you do many of these things. The first thing is to never abandon the fight for our culture. There's too much at stake. There are those who advocate that we can sit out, we can withdraw from the present culture and take what they call the Benedict option. The Benedict option says that I have my own little vestige of Christian order, which I cultivate by staying out of the fight. Now, let the ship go down, but in my little section, it's going to be great. Everything will be in good shape. Well, this is a recipe for defeat. It only turns the already small vestiges of Christian order into smaller vestiges. It makes it easier for the other side to destroy us piecemeal. And it does not prevent the ship from sinking. It's not the attitude of a Christian who is called to love and think about his neighbor as well as himself. And so the first point is very simple. We cannot abandon the fight for our culture or our principles. There are certain non-negotiables that we cannot forsake. The second thing we can do is to take control of the debate for our culture. Do not think that culture is unimportant or secondary. Be convinced that it is important. Engage in the fight for the culture and frame the debate for it. Don't let the liberals frame the debate. Allow them to frame the debate. Don't fight in a battlefield of their choosing. Don't get caught up in the emotional issues that they know how to manipulate well. Don't use their vocabulary like choice, or diversity, or gender, or dreamer, or even gay. Don't turn the fight into a battle of slogans. You can take control of the debate by going straight to the principles involved. When you go to the principles, it changes the nature of the debate. The deeper that you go, the better. Don't be superficial in your treatments of things. One way we can win the debate is not be afraid to talk about the virtues and topics that are viewed as politically incorrect. There are many topics that are politically incorrect that have a great capacity to captivate and inflame the passions of people to do good. Examples of these topics today can be the love of God, the idea of the sacred, family, heroism, purity, love of country. You can talk about the existence of a moral law, which fixes in all people a sense of right and wrong. Don't be afraid to say there is a truth, that there is truth and error. And not, as Oprah recently said, just your truth, but the truth. Don't be afraid to say that there is right and wrong, or even beauty and ugliness. Don't be afraid to mention these topics. Don't water them down. Do not dilute or adulterate them to cater to politically correct times. Don't be afraid to mention religious topics. One thing I've learned from public speaking is if you want to touch the soul, the American soul, talk about God and the things of God. The audience immediately comes alive. You could be the most atheist or most secular atmosphere possible. If you mention God, you will often be surprised. It resonates across the board. God touches the depth of the American soul, and as he should. And despite all the appearances to the contrary, we are a very religious nation. Indeed, when you compare American religiosity with that of the Europeans or other peoples, we simply blow away. I've met many Europeans who visit us, and they just marvel at how religious we are. We're supposed to be the nation of progress, technology, and modernity. Ex-British Prime Minister Tony Blair was once asked by an American journalist what his position on God was. And his secretary politely interrupted and said, "I'm sorry, we don't do God here." Next question. Well, we do God here. I'm not saying we do it perfectly. All I'm saying is we do it, and it's part of who we are. If we want to take charge of the cultural debate, we need to introduce these topics that resonate with Americans. Not just God and the things of God, but themes like honor and justice and sacrifice and patriotism that always move people to do great things. And so if we're going to have an influence on the cultural debate, we need to bring these themes up and bring them up everywhere. We're all part of the culture. And it presents us with many opportunities throughout the day to let our opinions be known and engage in this fight, whether it be in person, in writing, or on social media. And so when we talk, for example, about the national anthem controversy, don't limit the debate to this player, that team, or another team. Talk about love of country. Talk about the flag for which our soldiers died. Speak about the habits of the heart that are part of who we are. When you talk about abortion, don't talk about choice. Talk about the taking of human life and the transgression of God's law. The dream of debate is not about compassion, but about the upholding of the rule of law and the maintaining of national sovereignty. In the bathroom war, don't talk about feelings. Talk about a moral law. And the fact that you can't change the reality of your nature no matter how much you want it to happen. Civility is not about racism. It's about social conventions. It's about treating people with human dignity as images and likenesses of God. There are all sorts of debates that can be there's all sorts of controversies that can be out there that can be debated from a perspective of principles. All these things are very big themes embedded in very small things. There are things you could protest and make your voices heard, as I can gather that many of you already do quite extensively. Well, all these controversies help to fortify the habits of the heart, so needed for a return to order. And then if there's an added benefit in this, as the situation in the country gets worse, these topics appear more attractive to many more than you realize. And they become more intolerable to others, much fewer than you would imagine. Well, the third thing you can do is to be convinced that and realize how powerful we really are. All too often we're led to believe that we're all alone and that our ideas are unpopular and outdated. Nobody really thinks the way we do. I just heard an example that just sort of called this to mind. I had a sister who recently returned home after Christmas by plane. And then this Christmas was just a mess. Yes, you can imagine all the things that were happening with the cold weather. And she told how the plane was delayed on the tarmac, and the cabin was freezing inside. And they were there just sitting there. And at a certain point, she decided she couldn't stand it anymore. And so she called the stewardess and said in a somewhat loud voice, I'm freezing, can you put some heat on? When she said that, the whole plane erupted and started saying, I'm freezing too, turn up the heat. In the same way, we can bring up our principles. Many people are just waiting for us to say the word, and everyone else will start protesting as well. We don't realize how powerful our message is. There's a great illusion, this is a great illusion that works against us. If presented right, our ideas can awaken society longings for order. The liberal establishment, especially the media, have long tried to hide and suppress our ideas because they are so powerful. That is why they have made them politically correct and incorrect and awkward to bring up in public. But now the situation has changed because the other side unmasks itself many times by attacking the very, very American things that are part of our American order. And we are powerful because we can defend these topics that resonate with a large number of Americans. It makes it much easier for us to fight because radical liberals are doing this in a very aggressive and irrational manner. They have themselves just consumed with hatred. It's obvious that they are the aggressive party. In this debate, we are the ones that represent order, rational debate, and the beauty of our cause. We have the advantage also of working with the grace of God, which guides and aids us. So many of these themes resonate because people are thirsty for it. And finally, the fact that we are powerful can be proved by the fact that whenever you mention something, the tiniest vestige of Christian order, the other side is becoming increasingly hysterical. That didn't happen before. Our student activists on campus tell me that campus liberals are increasingly becoming unglued over the simple singing of God Bless America. I mean, they literally shake and scream when they hear it. They call it a fascist hymn. Well, nobody becomes unglued over something insignificant. They become unglued because they see it as a threat, a big threat. They fear Christian order. Sadly, they fear God. And many of them fear the idea of America that could love God. They fear all these things in very tiny doses. When they see us singing God Bless America, a very simple thing, and the vitriol level against the very small vestige of Christian order is only a confirmation of how powerful the whole Christian order is. So even the smallest things can be very powerful. You have an opportunity to practice those small habits of the heart. We do a great service to our country. And it could be something very simple. For example, a public display of patriotism or piety. Very powerful. I recently went to a Chick-fil-A in which there was what they call a missing man's table. I don't know if you've heard of those missing man's tables. It's a table set apart for a fallen soldier. And it was very powerful. And I'm sure it reinforced the people's love of country and sacrifice. It did indeed. A public and peaceful protest against some horrible thing can also be very effective and powerful. Disputing the public square is very important because then people see that they are not alone. They may not participate in the protest, but when they drive by, they say there are people who are protesting. How many times I've seen the power of these ideas in action when presented in a very bold way. I've seen victories over the other side. Occasions where the other side has to change its position or change the subject. It can happen if we're convinced how powerful we are. I'd like to bring up just a small but recent example of something that happened. We recently organized a protest against a satanic Christmas display in Boca Raton, Florida. They had a sort of a kind of, there was a nativity scene, and then they put a satanic symbol and sort of a very horrible display with things saying like, in Satan we trust, and all very, very, very horrible things. We mobilized e-protests by email and telephone campaigns and a physical protest of some 200 people on the day. And on that day, we were happy to see that the other side backed down and the display was not put up because the public was contrary to it. We felt very empowered by the experience. Well, before going any further, let me just briefly summarize what we've seen. I like to do that. Throughout the talk, I've used the image of a cruise ship and a never-ending cruise as a metaphor of what's happening in America today. Externally, the ship looks fine. But internally, there are major problems. In fact, people are no longer following the rules of a cruise ship by getting along. But it's a new situation that's developing where people are doing things, crazy things on board, and making it unbearable. This metaphor explains how liberals used to tolerate the remnants of Christian order. They were called the habits of the heart, because at least they helped keep enough order in society so they could enjoy life more. But now the most radicals are even taking these remnants of order, and because they see them as too restricted. The left can't tolerate these remnants of order. That's even in the smallest things have become politicized. And in the face of this situation, I outline 3 things that you can do to return the ship to order. The first thing is to never give up the fight for the culture. Do not take the Benedict option of withdrawing, waiting for better days. It's a recipe for disaster. The second thing was to take control of the debate, to frame the debate. Don't let the other side frame the debate. Go straight to the principles. Cut through the emotional issues that tend to dominate the news cycle. Don't be afraid to bring up religious or other politically incorrect topics that resonate with the American public. And finally, the third thing is to be convinced and realize just how powerful we really are. All too often, we are led to believe that we are alone and our ideas are outdated and unpopular. And this works against us. If we present our ideas right, they can awaken longings for order. The liberal establishment knows this and tries to suppress and hide our ideas because they know they are powerful, even in very small doses. And now is the time to bring these topics up and defend them in the public square. So let me leave you with one final thought. The thought is, well, we need to have the conviction that a return to order is not only necessary, but possible. Possible because the power and attraction of our Christian ideas is such that we are naturally turned toward them. They are very much according to our human nature. We're not proposing something contrary to our human nature. We tend to gravitate to them when disorder rules. It's naturally where we tend to go. I take it a step further, saying that a lot of people are already gravitating toward disorder. In the midst of our present chaos, many people are searching, soul searching, looking for something that they suspect once existed and might yet return. I'm not saying that these people are majority, but history is never decided by majorities. It's decided by impassioned minorities who exercise great influence over the majority. And there are sizable minorities out there with great passion and courage, as I see here tonight, who dare to defy the culture and say, no. So we need to be out there fighting for our culture. We need to appeal to all those who grieve for the nation we know and love. And such actions will attract God's blessing upon our cause. And of course, that's the key to the whole fight. Without God's blessing, we will not win. And the forces of evil are simply too great. And the weight of our own sins is also overwhelming. We must therefore rely upon God's help for a return to order. I never tire of saying our situation is like that of the prodigal son. You read the story of the prodigal son in the gospel. It says that you recall that he took his father's riches and then spent them on parties and games and just really until he had nothing. And what brought about the conversion of the prodigal son was not a moral problem, but an economic one. He ran out of money, and he had no way to live. And a great famine came over the land, and he realized that he had no place to go. And he realized the error of his ways and had longings for his father's house. And he rose up and came to the Father. Now, in the story of the prodigal son, we know that the son longed for the father. But we forget that the father longed much more for the son. He went, in fact, the father watched from the tower for news of his son and ran out to meet him when he came. And so we must be convinced that God desires our return to order much more than we do. And when he finds that we make an effort on our part, he will not be outdone in his generosity. He will favor our endeavors. It is my hope that in the crisis that threatens to come upon our land, So the book Return to Order serves to awaken in you longings for the Father's house, and will compel you to rise up and join together with others to change the culture and come to the Father. Thank you very much.
Any questions out there? Ray, you got a mic?
Looking back at recent events in the world, I think of England, where a significant amount of mayors are now Muslim. England had Brexit, which was, I thought, brought on by the influx of Muslims into the country. Getting to America, we have Dearborn, which is an isolated pocket of Muslim, and now we're electing Muslims to the federal government, congressmen. Having said that, a Muslim subscribes to the Quran, and the Quran makes it clear not to assimilate with infidels. A radicalized Muslim believes infidels should be killed. I see this cultural revolution you're talking about. I see it happening, and I see we're bringing it on. We're electing people who have not subscribed to the Christian foundations this country was founded upon, and I just would like to hear your thoughts on where we're heading.
Well, definitely the whole Islamic threat, and especially the immigration part of that threat, is very, I think it's extremely serious. And as you say, we are electing those. They are, the political establishment is supporting those Islamic people. And I might also add that the churches are not opposing them. I mean, they should be the ones in the forefront saying, well, these people are not in line. They hate the Christian religion. Our support for them is self-destructive. It works against us. We cannot support this. And I really lament the fact that the churches are not taking a role in this, because they have this idea, if we be nice to them, they will be nice to us. And that obviously doesn't work. So I think we need to, yeah, it is a definite problem. I'm glad to see that we're trying to keep them out, but these court orders are always being rolled back. I hope that we will continue to push those things ahead, because it definitely, it just simply doesn't make sense, and it is, again, part of this cultural revolution.
My name is Roger Fee. I have been a teacher of American world history, foreign policy, contemporary problems, political science in high school for 35 years, over 35. I would be kicked out for that if I were still teaching, I know that. However, I took some master's degree courses at Temple in the early 60s. And one was called Changing Perspectives in the Social Science. The professor I had, I won't say was communist, but he was very pink. And I disagreed with almost every philosophy that he came across, because I was the lawyer that was teaching the courses which compared communism, socialism, fascism, and capitalism. He brought me up after class, he said, "Why are you always arguing with me?" I said, "Because I don't agree with what you say." I said, "Why don't you just tell the truth?" And he said, "Do you want to pass this course?" That was a threat back in the 60s. I was back from Korea. I was 27 years of age, so I'm just a kid out of high school, afraid of a professor. And I challenged him, and I did pass, although he lowered my grade. But my point is, the seeds of this concept have been planted in the youth of our country for decades. And now it is blossoming. What advice would you have on how we combat the planting of that seed?
Well, as you say, the seed has been planted for a long, long time, especially in the 60s. I'm a baby boomer. I was raised in the 60s. And many times, a lot of people were saying, well, with the 60s, it's over. The youth, you can write off the youth. And yet every generation after that, a generation of conservative youth has arisen. And I credit that not to good teaching, because it's certainly not there, but because if these youth are exposed to ideas, to conservative ideas and Christian ideas, they are naturally attracted to that. I teach a lot of these youth, and I can testify to that they are very attracted to that. They become very enthused with these ideas. So, I mean, I think we need to have that in mind, that we're not teaching them something that's anti-natural. We're teaching them something that is in accordance with their human nature. And as youth, they get excited about great ideas, and we can excite them about great ideas. I think we need to continue the fight in the schools. I'm very pleased to see Common Core didn't make it, or had the problems it has, and it's been abandoned, at least by me. But I think also that we can't write off the youth, because these youth do grow up, they do form families, and when they form families, they tend to get more conservative, because they see the realities of life. They have to raise children. They see that acts have consequences, that we cannot write them off. They definitely will, many of them, not all of them, but many of them will change to a certain degree, and we need to keep that door open as well. So those are some of the things that at least come to my mind.
I'd just like to say that I wish I shared your optimism, but it's very hard to be optimistic in a country where the majority of its citizens now appear to be terrified of using the word Christmas.
No, it isn't. It isn't. But I think that does have. That battle, the war on Christmas, especially was and still is very, very prominent. I think there was a backlash against that. There was a big backlash, and then many companies took a step back. Walmart took a step back, which is the biggest retailer in the country. Others didn't. Actually, others did dig in their heels and are not giving in on that. We are a polarized country. Those ones who have dug in their heels, we're not going to change them, but we can change those who are somehow influenced by that. I mean, the fact that President Trump said Merry Christmas and continues to say it is something.
Forget the corporations, I'm talking about people on the street.
Oh, people on the street, yeah.
None of them are old enough to say the word Christmas anymore. It's happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Well, I mean, I think we need to continue the fight. I think it's not over. We have to just continue. We have to be out there saying it. Many times when you say it, they'll say it back. They're waiting for you to say it. I mean, we have to be proactive in this fight. It is definitely it's about it.
Yeah, if I could dovetail on what the gentleman said there, don't you think God is going to punish this country if things don't turn around? Isn't it almost to the point that we're about to fall off the edge? And somebody, if I could be so bold as to suggest that you say somewhere in your presentation that if it doesn't turn around, if God doesn't have mercy on us, we will be punished. He punished Israel in the Old Testament a number of times. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, God is watching the situation. We have to appeal to God for help, because that is really the only solution we have. But at the same time, God will punish a sinful nation. We have sinned, and I think we can expect that punishment. But we need to somehow do our part to appease God and to ask His mercy.
Sir.
Yes.
My name is John Lee. I have a question for you. Do you believe that all the divisiveness and hate that's going on right now is possibly being fueled by UN minions in this globalist agenda and the one world governance, and the way to do it with the United States is basically to split us up?
Well, definitely there is I should say, what I would call the liberal establishment, which is all the the educational establishment, the media establishment, the corporate establishment, that for years and decades has pushed this very, very liberal agenda upon the country and pushed it as far as they can. Definitely they're in that. The strength of their movement is much more in these artificial structures than in, let's say, the grassroots. The grassroots may be indifferent. A lot of many are indifferent or afraid to come through. They are a very, very important factor in this whole battle. I definitely believe that's true. I see your point.
I'm going to take one more question.
I go through the culture war every day in my workplace. Every day I go through it. I feel like I'm standing in a tunnel with a train coming at me, you know. I try to say to people, and they say they hate America. So, you know, it's really, you know, it's trying sometimes. That's all I can say. I mean, it's just, you know, they take advantage of things like that and make the culture war worse.
Yeah, and as I said, it's taken on a phase now. It's not just issues or legislation or something that's very general and things. It's become much more specific. I hate this. I hate America. I hate making America great. I hate you're saying Merry Christmas. I hate, you know, all these very, very small things that are the habits of the heart of sustaining the constitutional order of the America we know and love.
Time for one more? Is there still one? Okay, that would be the last question.
Hello.
Yes.
My name's Brian Sheets. I'm 20 years old, so I'm kind of like the demographic of a college student. I actually recently just graduated from DTI with the associate's degree in criminal justice just this past year. So my question is kind of an add-on to what Mr. Feig over there stated. But I want to just ask the 3 points that you pointed out in your presentation. Is that something that somebody like me, or you know, somebody who's around my age, who's either about to go into college, or is going through college, or is just in that demographic, is that something where we can kind of fight against this established order of this, you know, of the liberal lunacy that's on college campuses and all that? Is that something that we can fight against? You know, what you pointed out?
I definitely think it is. I think that we don't, on a college campus, I work with people who do a college campus outreach, and it's true that the campuses are very liberal, and they do have that liberal, everything about them is very liberal, but they do find conservative students on any campus. Any campus you will find conservative students. Many times they are isolated and they think that they're the only ones. If you can find those students, if you can organize those students, if you can, you know, pass out a leaflet or do something on campus that will challenge the liberals, you'll be surprised at the results. It's not you don't write it off. You do have possibilities to act, but you have to act. You have to present your issues well. You have to be prepared, and you have to get together with those who are in that problem.
Hello, my name is Mitchell. I'm also 20 years old. I'd like to speak as one of these conservative students. I actually go to Okay. My name is Mitchell. I'm 20 years old as well. Probably some of the youngest people here. I actually am a conservative libertarian student. I go to school at Reading Area Community College, and I'm part of an organization called Young Americans for Liberty. And I'm not sure if you're familiar. I'm not sure if you're after this. We've had a lot of speakers. I'd like to get speakers at my campus, but RAC is one of those little campuses. I actually got in trouble for handing out pocket constitutions at my school. So it is a problem, but there are No, but there is hope. That organization has 900 chapters across the country, so it's not necessarily as bad as you might think. There are conservative libertarian students out there. I'm more of a libertarian inspired. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ron Paul. Very inspiring to me. But it's my first time I've been to one of the meetings, and I'm very interested in your ideas. I'm part of the Berks County Libertarian Party, and we're also trying to get people to to come to our meeting. Our next meeting is next Thursday. If any of you want to talk to me about that, I'm interested. But I just wanted to let you guys know that there are young conservatives out there that are trying to make a difference and spread the Constitution.
Yeah, definitely. There are all sorts of organizations like Americans for Liberty, ISI, Intercollegiate Studies Institute. There are all sorts of advocate groups that train students in how to in student activism. It's not all over. It isn't contested. So there are. It is a fight. It is a fight. Right. Yeah.
Helen, did you tell me to do that?
I wanted to do it because it didn't seem like you were going to do it, so I did.
Okay, so again, his book is in the back. Please buy one of his books. These folks went back there. Actually, John, where's John? Oh, okay, he's still there. I had this in my folder, and I think it's going to take 2 minutes to read it. I think this is very appropriate. Sent to me by a friend of mine, which I think some others might have gotten it. And it said, I used to think I was just a regular guy. If any of you remember this. I used to think I was just a regular guy, but I was born white, which now, whether I like it or not, makes me a racist. I'm a physical and moral conservative, which by today's standards makes me a fascist. I am heterosexual, which according to gay folks now makes me homophobic. I am non-union, which makes me a traitor to the working class and an ally of big business. I'm a Christian, which now labels me as an infidel. I am older than 70, which makes me a useless old man. I think and I reason, therefore I doubt much that the mainstream media tells me, which must make me a reactionary. I am proud of my heritage, which makes me a centrophobe. I value my safety and that of my family, and I appreciate the police and the legal system, which makes me a right-wing extremist. I believe in hard work, fair play, and fair compensation according to each individual's merits, which today makes me an anti-socialist. I believe in the defense and protection of the whole land for and by all citizens, which now makes me a militant. Recently, a woman called me and my friends a basket of deplorables. You remember that one? Please, help me come to terms with the new me, because I'm not sure who I am anymore. I would like to thank my friends for sticking with me through this abrupt, newfound change in my life and my thinking. I just can't imagine or understand what happened to me so quickly. Funny, it all just seemed to take place the last 8 years. Oh, and if all this crap wasn't enough to deal with, I'm now afraid to go into either bathroom. That's how I am done. A couple things before I forget. Please be very careful. There is icy spots right past the front door, so be careful. If you're several in the car, maybe someone can get the car and bring it up to the front door, but be extremely careful. I also want to tell you that the Lehigh Valley Tea Party, who's Joe's here, Lehigh Valley Tea Party, next Thursday, is it John? Is that what it? Joe. Congressman Luke Barletta will be there. He's running for the U.S. Senate. Linda and I were planning to go, but we found out there is another meeting that particular night that we must go to. So if you get a chance, you should try to go there as well. Also, next month, Scott Wagner will be here for governor. Folks, please come here, bring your questions. You want to talk with him? As I said, upfront and personal. We also, Rod in particular, needs help on the legislative committee. He's also working for our candidates tonight. So see him, some specifics. I believe he has someone working on Excel. We can use people to maybe gather information for the candidates, as well as find their telephone numbers and so forth, send letters out, follow up with responses and so forth. I'm not sure of all the details, but Rod Millard right there in the red, please talk with him. Couple minutes left. Anything for the good of the order? Anybody have anything you'd like to say? Anything at all? I already did that, but it doesn't hurt to say it again. Anybody, any questions, any comments, anything?
Sam.
Yes, I heard somebody.
Over here.
Where's here? Okay, yes, yes, sir. Ma'am.
I'd like to welcome some new people tonight in our neighborhood that I've been bugging for years, Al and Debbie Keeper.
Stand up, please. Please, if you don't mind. Matter of fact, I was supposed to ask, is there any new people here tonight? Any other new people, stand up, please, please. Fantastic. Okay. Could you fill out membership forms? If you did not, see this young lady, what? See this middle-aged lady, or whatever she wants to be called, one of those things, your feelings, whatever it might be. Also, those of you that are new here tonight for the first time, if you don't mind, could you tell us what brought you here? How did you hear of us? Anybody want to say anything? I know you mentioned about there are your friends back there. Anybody else here? Can you tell us? Yes? Dean? Hey, thank you, Dean. Dean's still here? Thank you.
I'm messaging on Facebook.
Oh, he's still on Facebook. Fantastic, Dean. Anybody else want to tell us? You're an old timer. I know you.
Oh, yeah, I have breakfast with these guys Thursday morning, and they keep mentioning it, but I also heard it on the radio this morning.
That's fantastic. Yes, that's one of our people. And he cannot come to the meetings on Thursday night. He works, but he helps us during the day by calling in. And I listened to him last week, and he's fantastic. So that's great. I appreciate that. Anybody have any other input? That's great. Okay, we're going to close the. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to close the meeting with the prayer.
Heavenly Father, as we come to the end of our time together, we thank you for what has been accomplished here today. May the matters discussed serve as a catalyst to move us forward and cause us to advance and see growth in all areas of our lives. May we leave here recognizing you are the God of all wisdom and you are willing to lead us forward. This we pray in the name of the Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Folks, again, please be very careful going out. Also, stop by John's stable, talk to John, buy a book. Don't forget, London 912, Luke Arletta, if you can make it. Thank you all, folks, for coming.
Where is the power button on this? Power button? Oh, that's it.